Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Home Video Library. I'm your host Nathan P. Butler. In this episode, we finish out our three-part look at the Star Wars Laserdiscs. Now, let me say up front, you've already seen a little bit about the Laserdisc before this three-part series back in episodes 9 and 24.1 of this series. I'll be referencing those here in this episode. So for more details on a couple of releases, I'll point you back to those so we're not retreading old ground in this case. So what have we seen so far? We saw a release of A New Hope in 82 and then in 83, where we saw that same transition between 20th Century Fox Video and CBS Fox happening. We saw the first release of The Empire Strikes Back on Laserdisc in 1984, also as the first release with surround sound. We went into 1985, and we saw a shift, temporarily, from extended play discs that can have about an hour of content on either side into standard play discs, or CAV discs, that could have about a half an hour on either side, which meant we had releases that instead of having one disc, had three for A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and all of the releases, from those down to the first ones, all of those were time compressed. Taking the films, taking out some frames, and squishing the runtime down without cutting out entire scenes so it would fit onto that particular storage medium, like was the case with the CEDs, the capacitance electronic discs. We then saw that in 1986, we had the release of Return of the Jedi on Laserdisc for the first time, alongside VHS and the other formats, and that was a big deal because it was the first to not be time compressed. That meant it was extended play, but it was across two different discs, three different sides, in order to show the whole film without having to time compress anything and cut any frames out. And it was also the first release with digital sound, where they encoded the sound onto the disc very much like a CD to go along with the analog video data on the disc. So far, though, still haven't seen anything in widescreen. It's all been full screen. Now, for a lot of Star Wars fans, they watched their Star Wars films on VHS. It was the single most popular format of its time. It won the format war against Betamax. By the time you get to 1990, there aren't any more Star Wars releases even in Betamax. By the time you get past 86 or so, there aren't more releases in CED. The different platforms or the different media are dwindling down until VHS is essentially the reigning king, although not necessarily in video quality, more just in terms of mass appeal to consumers. So for many of us, the first time we ever had a chance to see Star Wars films in widescreen format outside of theaters or watching them on 16mm, which aren't really meant for home use, was in 1992 with the Special Letterbox Collector's Edition, covered much earlier in this series. This is that box set available through the Lucasfilm Company store at the time that had all three classic trilogy films in widescreen format. It had that abbreviated version of George Lucas' The Creative Impulse, the book, little certificate with it, and a specially boxed, just with a little label on it, version of From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of a Saga. For most Star Wars fans who weren't heavy enough into things to look for that particular widescreen set, the time that they got a chance to see it in widescreen for the first time at home was this one. And there's a variant of this we'll see actually in our next episode. This is the 1995 THX Remastered Edition in widescreen format that just has the three films in it in widescreen form with that THX remastering. So, for the VHS consumer, widescreen was a 90s innovation. If you lived in Japan, though, where Laserdisc was huge, widescreen came much, much earlier for Star Wars fans. You could actually get a widescreen version of A New Hope, for instance, as early as the same year as the first full-screen Laserdisc of Return of the Jedi came out here, 1986. It had little Japanese subtitles to it, but it was Star Wars being released in widescreen format, just not for US audiences. That would all change in 1989, which is where we start this episode. We're going to cover in this episode from 1989 through the end of Star Wars Laserdiscs. In 1989, a version of that Japanese mastered Laserdisc from 86 finally hit the US. That was with this, what is truly the first widescreen home video release in the United States. That's right, a full 3 years before that VHS set was available. Yet another reason why Laserdisc was thought of as a superior visual format at the time. Notice different packaging, says Special Widescreen Edition up there at the top. Otherwise, the image there is the same. right? We've got laser video disc, CBS Fox, stereo extended play. And in this case, the back, similar info, slightly realigned in this case. This is, if you look at the runtime, finally, 121 minutes instead of 118. It is not time compressed. It's widescreen, and it's not slightly faster. Yes! Much, much better of a release here. And they kind of went all out when it came to the packaging in this case, because instead of just having the one side where you slip the disc in, where even in the case of the stereo extended play editions of the films, or the Return of the Jedi film in '86, it was still 2 discs, but it just got stuck in the one side. This one has a neat little opening here that gives you information. You have background on the one side about the film that's kind of interesting here, about the characters and behind the scenes text, and then on the other side, it shows us the chapter stops. This one has, it's 2 discs, in this case, 2 CLV extended play discs. Side 1 takes you through the beginning of the film up through Ben Kenobi rescues Luke from the Jawas. Side 2 takes us from where that one left off up through the rescue of Princess Leia, and then Side 3 takes us from there to the end of the film. It's another of these with more sides than are actually necessary. 2 discs with 3 sides used in one side that is not, and again, in this case, each of these sides, as you open it, has a disc stored in it. Truly, truly awesome here. Yay, it's not CAV, so it doesn't have that slightly better picture quality. Yeah, it's not going to have the digital sound at this point, but it's finally the right length, and it's widescreen. It was the definitive version to have at the time, in 1989. Accompanying that, also in 1989, was a special widescreen edition of The Empire Strikes Back. Again, another extended play disc here. It is stereo, doesn't say stereo extended play, but it is stereo. Again, time compression here. Nope. 124 minutes there instead of 120. This is also the correct length. Okay. Also on 2 different CLV or extended play discs, also using just 3 sides instead of 4. The front here is similar. The back there. And of course, like the other, the cool, whoa, opening up with the images and some behind the scenes information and chapter stops. So you got behind the scenes on the one side there. The other side has a thing on the special effects. You've got your cast information here. In this case, your chapter stops are actually listed on the back there. So in this case, disc 1 or side 1 of disc 1 takes you through the beginning up through Escape in the Falcon. The second side, which is the second side of the first disc, takes you up through the City in the Clouds, and then the rest of it is on side 3, which is the first side of the second disc where the opposite side is not used. Again, pretty awesome. Not time compressed, widescreen, great release, definitive for its time, and about $70, as was the case with the New Hope. So a little more expensive because it's 2 discs, but much, much better because you can finally see the whole picture, which is a big deal. Now, interestingly, these releases were staggered. It wasn't all 3 released at the exact same time. So Return of the Jedi actually didn't come until 1990, but it did get a special widescreen edition release in 1990, and that's this one. There's our special widescreen edition up there. Laserdisc, or laser video disc, as the other one say. This one just says Laserdisc here. Stereo extended play, still with digital sound, as was the case in the previous version. Again, back information, just like Empire has your chapter stops listed on the back. In this case, the first side takes you through the planning of the attack on the Death Star. The second side takes you through the Ewoks joining the battle. And side 3 only has 2 chapters. The very, very beginning of it, up through Luke becomes a true Jedi Knight, and then onward to the end of the film. You open it up, again, the cool thing here. In this case, you've got behind the scenes is all that they call it on the side. The other side is just some cool pictures to make it a nice, better presentation. Yeah. A definitive way of checking out Return of the Jedi as of 1990. Now, put this in context, what else was happening in 1990 as far as Star Wars home video releases? That was the year that we got the very first boxed set of the Star Wars trilogy, or the original trilogy, on VHS. There is no corresponding Betamax release, CED release, or Laserdisc release in a boxed set type of format at this point. This was full screen. You know this is the right one. Looking at the CBS Fox logo there, this is the one that was re-released in '92 with the Fox Video logo on it in slightly different packaging. That was the one released at the same time as the VHS first letterbox edition. So the VHS format still 2 to 3 years, depending on which of these dates we're talking about, 89 or 90, away from having its own letterboxed widescreen edition, and these are about as close as we're going to get to high quality new releases, but they're full screen. Also in 1990 we had the Ewok Adventure Caravan of Courage on VHS, Ewoks The Battle for Endor on VHS, Caravan of Courage on Laserdisc, and Ewoks The Battle for Endor on Laserdisc. And since I don't think I mentioned it at the time, these are extended play discs. If you want to see more information on these Laserdiscs, the Ewok ones, check out episode 24.1 of this series. Episode 24 was the VHS versions, 24.1 touches on those Laserdiscs. Now, there is one downside to this particular edition. Okay? The Return of the Jedi version, in order to cover up the Japanese subtitles, the way that it was set up, they basically had a situation where the widescreen image, right, it's letterbox, so you got the widescreen image with the black bars on top and bottom for a standard 4:3 screen. In order to cover up those subtitles and make use of them even in Japan, you had a situation where the widescreen image was higher on the screen than it normally would be for a widescreen release because the subtitles were running under the bottom. Those are now covered up, but the image is still a little bit higher on the screen. The other ones, especially A New Hope, suffered from that translation also coming from a Japanese master. This version of A New Hope it's weird. It's like the aspect ratio is constantly changing because you had the instance where you had the widescreen image and then the subtitles, but as you go reel to reel within the film itself, they're constantly coming in with these black bars to cover up the subtitles. But those bars weren't exactly in the same place on each reel. So slowly but surely they're creeping in, and you wind up with the aspect ratio changing because a little bit of the top and bottom are tending to be cut off as they're trying to cover up the subtitles. It's not a consistent aspect ratio, though not something most people would necessarily realize unless they were really paying attention. And these, with those flaws, these three are the basis of that 1992 VHS set. These masters were used for those, so those flaws carry over into that first VHS widescreen release. 2 years later, it's 1992, and in context, that is the release of the box set again, this time with Fox Video on it instead of CBS Fox. Yes, we've gone from 20th Century Fox home video to CBS Fox Video to Fox Video, eventually be 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment as we continue to go along here. 92 again is when those three widescreen, special widescreen editions that we just saw were put together for a VHS release there in that special letterbox collector's edition. And in 92, we saw an oddity in Laserdisc releases for Star Wars, in that we saw two different releases for A New Hope, along with new releases for Empire and Return of the Jedi. In the case of A New Hope, if you think about it again, every time that they've changed between one label and another, they've tended, if they had a release that was recent, to take that one and switch its label. Okay? Well, it turns out that this 1989 release of the special widescreen edition of A New Hope was through CBS Fox, and they reissued this with digital sound, right? So better sound, digital quality, basically on there, encoded the way a CD would be encoded, in 1992. And that meant it would be reissued under the Fox Video logo. So you wind up with this 1992 release. Packaging pretty much the same, except for the fact that down here you've got the thing that says digital sound, right? And you have a Fox Video logo. It also says Laserdisc instead of Laser Video Disc. So if you put these two kind of stacked up, there's your differences there, right? Laser Video Disc versus Laserdisc, CBS Fox versus Fox Video, stereo extended play, regular stereo extended play, digital sound. The back of this one is essentially the same, right? Doesn't have the chapter stops listed, of course, because same packaging essentially, except for those changes, and same information on the inside. Still 2 discs, disc divided up the same way. So same video reissued, different digital soundtrack here as a Fox Video release. And digital sound was really the touchstone, in a sense, for Laserdiscs for Star Wars in 1992, because alongside that release of A New Hope, again with digital sound in widescreen format, we got this version of A New Hope. Stereo extended play, digital sound, easy to recognize because of the digital sound, the Fox Video, or the fact that it's black on the bottom instead of blue. Right there. Back, very similar to those earlier ones. It does have the chapter index on here, and it is 2-sided. We have the beginning of side 1 all the way up through aboard ship with Han Solo, and then from there on to the end of the film on the other side. You might be saying, wait a second. Whole reason these widescreen editions were on 2 discs was because they are CLV discs, they are extended play, they can fit an hour on either side, and they didn't time compress, so you could actually get the whole film without any speeding up taking place across those 3 discs. You just named 2 sides, Nate. What are we talking about? Yes, these are back to being time compressed again. So it's full screen and time compressed, both of which kind of suck, but at least it's got digital sound. Certainly not the best of the A New Hope releases in 1992. 1 disc, 2 sides. We're back to the time compression thing that really kind of drove people who are big film buffs nuts at the time. Though interestingly, it's compressed down to 119 minutes instead of 118 on that one. So in that case, you got an extra minute that the original time compression didn't have. With Empire, it's the other way around. The original time compression was 120 minutes. New release in 92, 119 minutes. Again, same thing here, stereo extended play, digital sound. For the first time here, Fox Video for the first time here, and similar back to what we've seen before with chapter stops on it. First side takes you through not a cave, and then the rest of the film after the Dark Side Cave is on the other side of the disc. So 1 disc, again, time compressed, but digital sound, and full screen. And then we get Return of the Jedi, another corresponding release here. Fox Video, stereo extended play, digital sound, but Return of the Jedi's had digital sound for all of its releases. And just like its other releases as well, this is the only Star Wars film released on Laserdisc in the US that is never time compressed. 132 minutes still straight through, which means, again, 2 discs with 3 sides of content. The first side taking us through the planning of the attack on the Death Star, the second side taking us to the back door of the base on Endor, or the Forest Moon of Endor, nothing sexual there, and then the rest of the film on side 3 in this case here. So, pretty neat, and I do find it interesting that during that transition here, you can look on the back of some of these and it says CBS Fox and Fox Video both. Right? The older label and then the newer label. That's also the case on The Empire Strikes Back from this year, but not the A New Hope one for this year. That one just says Fox Video. And in that case, I'm referring to actually both of them. The full screen and the widescreen version of A New Hope both just say Fox Video for this year. Only Empire and Jedi say CBS Fox and Fox Video. I should note here, by the way, that you have another instance of having a 3-sided film where it's actually CLV or extended play on the 1 disc on both sides, but then for the finale, it's a CAV encoding, a standard play encoding, so you can do the freeze frame and such. You'd find that in the 1992 extended play digital sound version of Return of the Jedi, whereas back in the 1986 version, right, which is the first release of that with digital sound, of course, that one was straight extended play on all 3 sides that made up the movie. Neither one being time compressed, but a different format to that 3rd side. That takes us out of 1992 into a huge year for Star Wars home video on Laserdisc, which is 1993. At this point, we have now seen widescreen releases, we've now seen digital audio releases, we have seen releases that aren't time compressed of all 3, albeit not on all the releases. In 1993, that's when the big overhaul happened, where Lucasfilm went in, made the picture better, made the sound better, did THX remastering on the entirety of the original trilogy in non-time compressed form in widescreen format with digital THX sound and gave us a massively heavy widescreen collector's edition Star Wars Trilogy, the definitive collection. Now, for a lot of details on these, go back and check out episode 9 of this series about the definitive collection. But quick things that are in context here. These are all standard play discs. About a half an hour, give or take, of content on each side, which means more discs per film. The films are not time compressed. It is their full length. They are widescreen. They are these THS remastered editions. Built into them are points of interest that have little commentary type things that you can pop up as you go along. And each film, instead of it being, okay, well, here's a side for the film, 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 blank side, makes use of the extra space, usually on the 5th side, and the blank 6th side to give you supplemental materials. The first Star Wars releases with real heavy supplemental materials in this case. It's interviews, behind-the-scenes stuff, really cool extras to go along with it. The size, though, there does mean that we're looking at 3 discs per film, so a 9-disc set. 3 of the discs have at least one side that's essentially bonus features. The films take up the other 6 discs plus one side each on those other 3, which is very similar to the 6 for the films versus 3 of bonus material type of ratio that we got for the Complete Saga Blu-ray set in 2011. With this being from a brand new master, by the way, this also means that those widescreen issues with the aspect ratio and the height on the screen of Return of the Jedi are fixed in this release. This is a brand new mastering. For what it's worth, this is also the one that comes with a little booklet that guides you through the definitive edition and does come with the unabridged George Lucas The Creative Impulse. Now, at the time I had a little bit of question on this. It turns out it looks like that all the American releases of this had George Lucas The Creative Impulse with no dust jacket. The only ones I've ever seen with a dust jacket were Japanese releases. So that sea change happens in 1993, and 2 years later, those THX remastered masters in widescreen format of the film are used to create the 1995 VHS THX remastered releases, and of course that is then done in a full-screen pan and scan format as well. So the THX remastered edition that we think of as a 1995 thing is actually technically a 1993 thing. Only in that case, it was only available on Laserdisc, and it becomes more widely and cheaply available on VHS and Laserdisc again in 95. Those 1995 Laserdiscs are these. Should look kind of familiar, right, from those 1995 VHS cases. Very similar here. Star Wars. A New Hope, of course. Different back, different front this time. You open it up. Cool information with the chapter stops, right? We have a background on the film, and then on the side, chapter breakdowns. We are back to CLV discs, extended play discs, about an hour on each side, but we're also back to, just like with the previous widescreen releases, no time compression, and in this case, only available in widescreen. But it's based on the masters from the definitive collection, so they are the fixed widescreen editions. Now, some would say, oh, well, that's just the definitive collection discs released individually. That's awesome! No, they're not. Okay? Same transfer of the film, but understand these are extended play discs, so they lack some of the features you would see on a standard play disc. It's less discs, there's only 2 in this case, with 3 different sides for the film, as opposed to 6 with 5 for the film and 1 for bonus features. Bonus feature-wise, these only have that interview with George Lucas that you see in the 3 parts, the same on the VHS editions. All the other extras and bonus features are exclusive to the definitive collection. They do not appear here at all, which kind of makes sense because you need to have an appropriate runtime for 2 extended play discs. Otherwise, the price is going to go through the roof again. For what it's worth, in this case, the film splits at Mos Eisley Spaceport, and then again at Dogfight. That is the dogfight between the Millennium Falcon and the TIE Fighters. We then had a 1995 release, again, widescreen only, of The Empire Strikes Back, a 2-disc extended play edition once again. In this case, THX remastered. Similar back format to the others. Similar interior. Information about the film on the one side, chapter stops on the other. In this case, the splits between the 3 sides, we have Crash Landing on Dagobah splits us from disc 1, or side 1 of disc 1 to side 2, and side 3 picks up right as Luke is leaving to go to Cloud City. Also in 95, of course, Return of the Jedi, widescreen edition here again, THX remastered. George Lucas interview just like the other two. Interior, yeah, pretty much the same, right? Information on one side, chapter stops on the other. As far as chapter stops in this case, outlining the Rebel attack in side 1. Side 2 ends with Luke loses control, right? Never! And then takes us on to side 3. Again, none of these time compressed, that's why it takes the 2 discs. So widescreen, THX remastered, not time compressed, THX remastered in terms of digital sound and picture quality. Really awesome releases if you're looking for them and not getting the definitive collection. The downside here, interestingly, is that there is no box set of these. The VHS releases could be bought individually or in box sets, whereas these, widescreen edition, only available individually, and only available in widescreen, whereas VHS had the option of widescreen or full screen at this point. Laserdisc was always ahead of the curve when it came to widescreen format. And finally, we move forward into 1996. There are no new Star Wars releases on Laserdisc, and that moves us into 97. 1997, of course, being the year that the special editions are released in theaters, and then very quickly on home video. You're probably most familiar with the fact that this was a time when you could get the widescreen version on VHS of the special editions in silver, or platinum, I think they might call it. You've got your gold version that was full screen, and much lesser known, but even cooler, was that special edition, limited edition collector's set from the time that also had the behind-the-scenes thing and some of the little goodies on the inside. In a similar packaging to that special version you could get on VHS, we have Laserdisc's last hurrah for Star Wars, which is this. The Star Wars Trilogy, Special Edition. Widescreen. It says widescreen there, but it's kind of hard to see right above the logo there because of the coloration on the little camera here and everything. Very basic back. The logo is very classy looking, of course. Slides open. You've got, of course, the films in there, individually packaged together, the discs individually packaged together. This was a 5-disc set. Yeah, A New Hope, Side 1, Extended Play, Side 2, Extended Play, Side 3, on the second disc, Standard Play, to offer during the climax more features like freeze frame and such. Go straight to Side 4, pick up with The Empire Strikes Back. Now you are into CLV again. Side 5, CLV, Side 6, CAV. Little different with Return of the Jedi. It's Side 7, 8, and 9. Extended Play, Extended Play, Extended Play, blank, in that case. This one is the one that came with a little booklet as well, that has some information about the special edition, and then your side chapter stops. Breaking-wise, A New Hope goes through Mos Eisley Spaceport, and then Han prepares to leave as the end of Side 1 and Side 2, respectively. Then Side 3 takes up the rest of the film. Empire Strikes Back, you have Luke meets Yoda splitting up from the first side to the second, and then lightsaber duel splits between the second side and the third, and Return of the Jedi splits at Outlining the Rebel Attack, and then at The Ewoks Turn the Tide. This does have some special features, though. Behind the end of A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, you have a trailer for each, and at the end of Return of the Jedi, on that other extended play disc, the reason why it needs that much space instead of being CAV like the other ones, you got a theatrical trailer for it, featurette, fleshing out the characters, the limits of 1977 technology, visual enhancements, the sound, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, a new musical finale, and As It Was Meant to Be. Quite a few little featurette type things on the changes made to the special edition. Probably not surprisingly, also, by the way, just like in 93 and 95, there's only a widescreen version of the Star Wars trilogy, the original trilogy, as the special edition in 97. VHS is still going to give you those options all the way up till 2000, whereas on Laserdisc, once you get to about 93, they've given up on full screen for Star Wars. It's straight widescreen all the way through. So for Laserdisc, that's 9 different versions of A New Hope, 7 different versions of The Empire Strikes Back, and 6 releases of Return of the Jedi. So we've seen a lot of different types here, right? Since 1982, we've seen widescreen, full screen, messed up widescreen, good widescreen, THX remastered, just digital sound, just surround sound, standard play, extended play, etc., etc. An interestingly varied format, but not the one that took precedence in its era. That crown goes to VHS. If you're looking for some interesting Star Wars home video releases of their time that were better quality than what you would necessarily get on VHS, although sometimes time compressed in the case of A New Hope and Empire, be sure to check out the Star Wars Laserdiscs, especially the awesome Definitive Collection, which again we looked at back in episode 9 if you're looking for more information. With that, we'll wrap up this episode and our coverage for now of the Laserdiscs. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the home video viewers.